But I wonder if these guys can actually top it.
Yeah, let us know. How excited are you guys? Give me a bit of a scream, a shout, a yell. Yeah, we got a lot of work to do here.
Who's that?
So I want to introduce you to Salome. She's all the way from Kenya, and she's going to rock your world.
Oh,
She's
no
managing
pressure.
all the other sessions, aren't you?
Thank you so much. The lovely, the bundle of joy, Brett Sinclair, head of new products, SSA. What can we say for the man? So we have an exciting day lined up for you. Lots of googly nutrition for your business. So we hope that you're pumped up and ready to go. Brett, what can we expect?
Well, we're going to be learning a hell of a lot. We've got 4 streams of information, so we're super excited. We're going to run through all the details later because we got some incredibly exciting news today. But anyone went to Mobile Monday last night? Okay. Well done. I'm amazed you're all here. Feeling okay? Okay, so we're actually going to start up with a bit of a warm-up session. So I'd like you all to stand up. This is part of this kind of googly American corporate get fit scheme.
Run by Brett.
Now, clearly, I am in the exercise business. I have a bit of weight to lose.
Are you sure that's you or me?
You look damn sexy today.
Whoa.
So what I want you to do is to part your legs just a little bit. Kind of ease up.
Let me move to the side, Brett. I'm scared of what
it's going to help the blood flow and get you even more excited. Now, you all know how to do this. Back in the school days, hey guys, how's that body feeling?
Like this.
Okay, I want you guys to copy exactly what I'm doing. That's it. I promise you, your brain's going to fire up after this session. Okay, now let's try the other side. Okay, you guys ready? Nicely warm. Okay, you all know how to do this. I want you to put your hand over here. Okay, now I want you to put your other hand over here. Now, if you do have any glasses, you're welcome to put them on now. Are we ready?
Open Gangnam Style. Gangnam Style. Open Gangnam Style. Gangnam Style. Open Gangnam Style.
Round of applause, guys. Well done.
Oh, thank you guys for being such a great audience. And just to get us started, some say that he was the industry head of Google UK. Others say that he's been in more verticals than I can count on both hands. Ladies and gentlemen, Luke McKend, Country Manager, Google South Africa.
Hello, everybody. Am I on? I'm on. So just before we start, and while I get a bit more technically set up here, I hope you all realize that whilst I was standing there, that was not actually just photography. That was actually video. So for all of you who are actually on Google Plus, and for some of you who may not be, you're going to find yourself dancing Gangnam Style on Google Plus over the next couple of minutes. So I encourage you all, you share it with your friends. All right. So who was here yesterday? 1, 2. Fantastic. No developers. We don't have to talk technical. We can talk business. And that's really what we want to do today. We want to make sure that we have an absolutely fantastic day talking to everybody about the kind of things that make the world go round. And a lot of what makes the world go round at the moment is, believe it or not, commerce. And that's something that is very close to our hearts in South Africa. And I'd like to believe that it's close to the hearts of everybody in this room. What we'd like to do is share some of our experiences, a little bit about what we've learned this year, and talk to you about how to become not just a better digital business, but the best digital business you can possibly be. And if there's one thing you can take away from here today, I think it's the sense that we all have the potential to, whether you run your own business, whether you're a digital manager, whether you're an agency, that we in some way can make a change that help our businesses be more profitable, better, and possibly the best digital business in South Africa. So, no further ado. Let's just reflect for a moment on what we're actually dealing with here. So that's a really big number. 2 billion people. And I suppose, this is a number we're bombarded with all the time. But I'm, of course, much more interested in what's happening in South Africa. Now, last year when we were here, we were talking about, what, 8.5 million people, perhaps? But that's really changing fast. And for those of you who know Arthur Goldstuck, and I'm sure most of you will have read much of Arthur's work, you'll actually see that this number is accelerating really, really fast. So how many people are online in South Africa, if not right now, but in general? How many people are regular internet users? What do we think? Sorry, we've got an 8 million. It's a bit conservative, I'd like to say. 5, 12. I think we're much closer to around about 11 million or so, and I think that's from the 8.5 where we were last year. We're actually talking about much, much bigger numbers. And that's incredibly important because we see this number accelerating, particularly with the use of mobile. One of the numbers on that slide that I find particularly interesting is the fact that roughly only 1 million South Africans have ADSL access. Now, if you put that in context, and we're talking about 11 million people who are online in South Africa on a regular basis, it really begs the question, where is everybody else going when they're online? So I suspect if you're running a business right now, everybody else back at the office is actually online, which is probably one place. But the other thing that people are doing is they're doing it by mobile. And that's incredibly important because it gives us a pointer as to what we're going to have to be thinking about as businesses as we move forward in South Africa. And the stats all bear it out. If we think about the number of smartphones that are emerging, whether it's an iPhone, whether it's an Android phone, smartphones are absolutely dominating our experience of the internet, particularly because South Africans are on the move so frequently. And if you look at that, something like 6 million smartphones in South Africa by 2015. And if you speak to operators, it might well be a conservative number. I think from a commercial point of view, one of the things that I find really heartening is this thing that Arthur Goldstuck talks about called the Internet Participation Curve. What he's saying is that despite the fact that there are a lot of people online, not everybody's really that comfortable actually sharing real information, whether it's their personal information or whether it's, from our point of view, something really important, particularly buying something, a credit card. Now, what he suggests is that it takes time for people to actually get to the point where they feel comfortable sharing this kind of information. And right now, there are probably only about 3.5 million users who've been online for about 5 years or more, which is the time he reckons it takes for people to get that comfortable. But this number is going to more than double by the time we hit 2015. And that's incredibly important because any industry where your addressable market actually doubles in size over the next 2 years is something we have to be excited about. We've done quite a bit of research this year that not only shows that the market is in fact growing, but we now actually have the proof to show that businesses of all sizes really benefit from the internet, whether you're a large business or, more importantly, if you're a small business that's growing fast. What we've shown that actually just the fact of having a website means that it's likely that your business is going to be more profitable. And the rate at which it's more profitable, about 100% more businesses have said they're more profitable if they have a website than if they don't. And a substantial proportion actually say they are very profitable. So there's a really good reason, I think, not just for us as business owners to be online, but I think it points a direction for everybody who's potentially helping others, whether you're an agency, whether you're a consultant. Helping your clients get online is a really important first step to helping them become better, more profitable businesses. We've also done a bit of research which shows not just how profitable small businesses are, but what sort of contribution are we making to the South African economy? And if you look at the sheer numbers, they appear very big on the surface. Now, breaking it all down, it looks like about 60 billion rand over the course of the years, the kind of contribution that we're all making to the South African economy, which is a relatively big number. But let's break it down slightly more. Of that 60 billion, about 11 billion is transactional commerce online. But let's break it down one step further. Of that, 9 billion is actually travel, and only 2.5 billion is e-commerce. Now, the good thing is that's a really small number, relatively speaking, compared to the total contribution. And it means we're working off a low base. And it's much easier, as we all know, to grow off a low base really fast than it is to grow off a high base. And that number is growing at roughly 40% year on year. So there's some really big numbers. We're making a substantial contribution to the South African economy. But perhaps more importantly, it's important to assess just how important is the internet to everybody on an individual basis. And there are a couple of different ways that you can measure this. So I think it was the Boston Consulting Group who came up with this question, something to the effect of, what are you prepared to give up for a year rather than have the internet? Something to that effect. And if you look at all of those different things there, I think they kind of reflect a lot of South African priorities. So satellite navigation kind of makes sense because you can get anywhere on your phone these days. You know, you got satellite navigation in your pocket. Fast food, I can cope with, but you know, let's go down that list a bit. You know, I thought cleanliness was next to godliness. Clearly not. Now, I think in Cape Town it's probably less the case, but in Johannesburg I can completely understand that 10% of people, look, cars are really important. Let's face it. If in Joburg you don't have a big car, you're nobody. So less important here. And of course we're based in Joburg, but none of us have big cars. But we have all given up satellite navigation, I have to tell you that. But it just goes to show that on a personal basis, the internet is actually really important to everybody. Now we know that the internet helps you be more profitable. We know that the internet's making a significant economic contribution. But what have we been doing? And I think it's useful every now and again as an organization just to reflect on the kind of things that you do to help your industry, perhaps to grow the ecosystem. And one of Google South Africa's major missions is to help try and grow the ecosystem by having events like this. But there's a bunch of other things that we've been doing, and I'd just like to share one or two of them. So let's have a look. Has anybody heard of our project Waza Online? So far, Waza Online was a campaign that we initiated that enables really small business to get online with a very basic website, very quickly, very easily, and most importantly, for free. So a lot of the barriers to access in terms of starting up in your first step, making your first step, stepping up that first rung on the ladder of becoming involved in the internet, we tried to take that away. And 35,000 new websites have been created in South Africa through Waza Online over the course of the last year. That's an amazing number. Craig Wing, are you in the audience? There he is, and he's got a massive tash as well. So there's a man that needs a contribution. But Craig is responsible for this. So thank you, Craig. 35,000 new websites. That's 6% more local domains have been created through this project alone in South Africa. I think that's phenomenal. We've made contributions by initiating Engage. How many people are part of the Engage program in the audience? Quite a few. I'm hoping that this is a project that's really useful to your businesses, that's providing you with new skills, new opportunities to reach out to your customers. And that's another way that we're working with our community. G South Africa. Who was here last year? Who was there last year in Joburg? Yeah, you don't want to travel that far. But 2 years ago, the first day of my job in South Africa was actually G South Africa 2010. And I'll never forget it because I've been here for, I think, a grand total of something like 9 minutes on the job. I had to introduce to an audience that I wasn't particularly familiar with a team I didn't know. But what a wonderful experience. All of those people were so willing to engage, to find out more, and I get the same sense from every audience we speak to. And it's another really important part of what we try and do in South Africa. We try and make cultural contributions. We've provided the Nelson Mandela Foundation with money to help them digitize their archives. And there's some absolutely phenomenal content, and in fact quite moving content. When you're actually able to see some of the letters that he wrote in prison in a tiny handwriting in order to make sure that it actually got out. That's an experience that everybody can now have. And I think that it's a small thing, but it's something we try to make available to the world. More recently, using Hangout. So we're able to make some of these conversations more widely available. Now, I'm hoping that the Hangouts that we the next Hangout we have with President Zuma actually, it enables a bit more sort of interaction, perhaps a few more questions. Although Rudy Clubby did a really good job at the time. Traffic. So as of a few months ago, it's now possible to actually see what the traffic is like using your phone whilst you make your commuting decisions, whilst you make your journey decisions. Another incredibly powerful piece of information. And not just that, but MapMaker. Now, if you think about MapMaker, has anybody used MapMaker to actually make an edit? It's an incredible piece of equipment. If you go online to Google Maps and you have a look at MapMaker, what it actually enables you to do is to create your own maps, to enrich your own mapping environment by adding things that really make a difference to you, whether it's a school that's not there, whether it's a road that's perhaps not being mapped accurately, whether there are local features. And we have entire cities in Africa that have been mapped entirely through MapMaker. In fact, I think one of our most avid MapMaker contributors has made well over 10,000 edits to Google Maps. Now, that's an incredibly powerful thing because it means that for some people, where maps were not available at all in any of their communities, they now have full mapping capabilities. And we brought that to South Africa. But enough about Google South Africa. What else are South Africans doing online? There's a lot of cool stuff going on. Casper Lee. Anybody seen this guy? We might even be able to meet him later on. Now, here's a guy, 16 years old, 13 million views. It's entirely possible for South Africans to make a name for themselves on the global stage. We have access to not just the South African audience, and that's incredibly important. We have agencies doing incredibly creative work, winning awards for it, using a combination of products to reach their audiences. We have 16-year-olds creating websites that enable people to track wildlife. The youngest honorary ranger in South Africa is a 16-year-old boy who created this particular wildlife tracking website. That's incredible. And it means that it's not just people who have huge resources at their disposal, but it's entirely possible for, in a sense, it's that cliche, it's the dream. Somebody in their garage creating a website that reaches out to the world, and it is happening in South Africa. We even have clients who are doing some really innovative things, reaching huge numbers of the South African internet population using a range of advertising products. And we have people who are doing some things that are potentially quite funny. Now, I don't know if anybody's seen this particular clip, but it is Cape Town, so I think we need to play this just to get a full sense of what it's all about.
It's cool to be from Cape Town because in Cape Town we have the beach. And I went to the beach the other day, and at the beach, a lady friend of mine showed up, and she had a Louis Vuitton handbag, and she said it was the coolest bag on the beach, but I had to disagree with her because I had a cooler bag.
Okay, so technically,
Press that button!
technically slightly inept, but I think fortunately the language was there. Now, were I able to actually get this on screen, you would be able to press that button and actually show what's whether you like this thing or not. So I think, look, there are loads of people who are doing really interesting things online. I get the sense that if you look at all of the different things that we've done during the course of the year, not only have we learned that it's possible for businesses to grow really profitably online. And a lot of us, I think, in this room have known that. But now we have the facts. We know this is true. We can apply this to our businesses. We can talk to our clients about this. We also know that from a macroeconomic point of view, we're making a significant contribution to the South African economy. The size of the internet economy in South Africa right now is the equivalent of the entire northern province. There's a stat you can throw out next time you have dinner. So we're making a really significant contribution. There are some fantastic projects that we're involved in, and I know that a number of you are involved in these as well and have participated through the course of the year. But more importantly, every single one of us is actually making a unique contribution, and you can see that through the few examples that we've shown, whether it's agencies doing amazing creative work, whether it's really young guys taking the opportunities, building products that people really want to use, or whether it's just doing really out there kind of things like Casper Lee, putting content up there, hoping for the best, and finding an audience of 13 million people. There's some wonderful things happening. And what I'm hoping today is that we can share some of that with you and give you some of the tools and techniques that help us all become better digital businesses. But before we continue, we do indeed have a special guest. Now, this is particularly sensitive for me because the person I'm about to introduce is in fact my boss. So you all have to be quite nice, please. And the applause you're about to give will be the loudest of the day. I'd like to encourage Meir Brand to come on stage and have a conversation. Yay! I'd like to spend the next 2 or 3 minutes asking Meir about some of his experiences. Thank you, Meir. And what we'd also like to do, while I ask 1 or 2 initial questions, I'm sure that there might be questions you've always wanted to ask, whether it's of Meir, who represents a region that incorporates South Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, Israel, Greece. There's a lot going on in many of those countries, a lot of really interesting things. But if you want to ask a question of myself, any of the other Googlers in the room, please feel free. We've got some roving mics. Who's got the roving mics? Okay, so there's one down there and there's one over there. So while we have a chat, have a think of a few questions. We've got about another 10, 15 minutes, and we'll take it from there. So Meir, welcome to South Africa.
Thank you. Good morning. It's a pleasure. It's really fun to be here.
I think it's not your first time in South Africa, but I think it's your first time in Cape Town.
Absolutely. So I've been to South Africa frequently, I think, in the past 3 years. And it's always a pleasure to come back, and I'm really excited to be here. It is my first time in Cape Town. I finally get why everyone loves this place. Not very hard. You don't have to be a genius for that. The sun is beautiful. And then yesterday, someone gave me a real insight of why people like to be here. And what they told me is, you know, you start working later here. And I said, oh, that's fine. So you probably stay later, right? No, you actually leave earlier. So, okay, now I got it.
Yeah, so there's a strong argument for the Google office to be relocated, perhaps. So Meir, I think you've been here quite often, and I think you've seen quite a few changes over the course of probably the last. Just how long have you been at Google? Just remind us.
7 years.
Okay, so in Google years, that is a long time.
And dog years as well.
Indeed, we're not going to calculate exactly how many. But I was just wondering, over that amount of time, there's a huge amount of change that's happened in the digital space, and you've been in one of the places that is renowned for a lot of innovation. What are some of the key changes that you've seen, perhaps at Google and in the sort of digital environment over the last 7 years that have been personal highlights?
Yeah, that's a really interesting. It's a really interesting question because 7 years is a lot of time. And in the digital space, it's like an infinite amount of time. When I joined Google, there were 3,500 people in the company. There's now a bit more than 30,000, so almost tenfold within 7 years. But when you think about the mission of Google, it's not really surprising. The mission of trying to help organize the world's information and make it relevant and accessible to everyone is a huge mission. And it will take a big company to help move that mission forward. And it's actually such a big mission that it will take many companies and all of humanity to work to make it run forward. It's not only that things are changing fast, the pace of change is constantly increasing, which is another super interesting phenomena. So if you think, for example, for a second about phone penetration, It took more than 60 years for the phone in the US to reach 40% penetration. More than 60 years. It took mobile phones just a bit more than 20 years to reach 40% penetrations in the US. It took smartphones just about 10 years to reach 40% penetration. And I think tablet is going to be much faster. So it's not only things are kind of changing all the time, the pace of change is constantly increasing. And that means that companies in the digital space constantly need to adopt themselves, change themselves. And the only way to do that is through innovation. So
I think it's quite interesting, that pace of change. If you think about what's happening in South Africa and perhaps in Africa, it's so fast that one sometimes gets the sense that there's an increasing, perhaps people describe it as a digital divide. The gap between those of us in the room who have access to tablets, PCs, constant connectivity, and those that don't is potentially growing almost as fast as the internet is growing. What's your sense of how we work in Africa to try and bridge this gap?
Yeah, again, a big, huge question. If you ask me, the most exciting thing about this region is about the potential and is about the future. So you just showed on your slide that 2 billion people are connected to the internet. And sometimes for us, I think most of this audience, we feel that 2 billion is everyone on earth, right? Because most of our friends and the social economic segment we come from are all online. But the fact is there are about 7 billion people, right? So we still need to bring 4 or 5 billion people into this revolution, this digital revolution. And when you look what's coming up in the next 5-10 years, all the excitement, all the growth is going to come from emerging markets. And Africa is going to be one of those key sources of engine of bringing the new users online. And those users will have a very different first-hand experience about what the internet is from what we had. Because most of us had the first-hand experience of what the internet is through PC, right? A PC experience. A lot of the new people coming into the internet area, their first experience is a mobile experience. So we really have a challenge there. One, to make sure that that mobile experience is accessible to billions of people. And the other is that the experience on this mobile is as good as our experience was on PC. So there's a lot of work to be done here. And I think it's also interesting when you look at the economic environment. A lot of countries today are talking about increasing inequalities of economics within the countries. But if you look globally, there's actually less and less gap between countries because emerging markets are catching up and are now the main source of growth. And we're seeing globally the digital divide decreasing, but then within countries, we see a big gap. And I think one of Google's challenges and the industry is how do we make sure everyone is part of this? How do we make sure everyone is part of this?
Yeah, I think it's a key challenge for us in South Africa as well. But I was wondering whether, in your experience in Israel, and having been with Google for so long and worked in Israel even prior to that, it's even been nicknamed the startup nation. So many different innovations come out of Israel, more venture capital per person than any other country in the world, I believe. So a hotbed of innovation, and particularly tech innovation. Are there any lessons that we can learn in South Africa and in Cape Town? I think there's been a real concerted effort to build a center of excellence around tech and internet innovation. What could we potentially learn from Israel in the way you guys are constantly punching above your weight in that space?
There's been some interesting research around what creates areas of hotbed innovations. Areas like the Silicon Valley or Israel, and now we're seeing those areas also come up in places like China, and we do find some kind of key essentials that kind of build this ecosystem. I think the first one and the most important one is very high standards of academic education, right, and technical education. So if you think about the Silicon Valley or the Bay Area, it's no wonder you have Stanford and Berkeley and other very, very kind of strong institutions with strong academic background. Same goes for Israel. The Tel Aviv University, Technion University have strong reputation in their world. So having a very strong science background, mathematical background, engineering, computer science is kind of one key component. The other one, I think, is actually a softer one. It's more difficult to get it, and it's a cultural mindset, if you want. And the key thing that comes up to my mind is a mindset that allows and appreciates risk-taking. Okay, that risk-taking is something that is appreciated. Now, let's think about it, because it's a bit tricky, this one. There are some cultures that if you fail, you do a startup and you fail, you have a stigma of a failure, and you can't get away from that stigma, right? That kind of culture will make it very, very difficult for innovation to strive, because we know that innovation is all about taking risk, high risk, and high risk can come many times with failure. So if we're not going to accept failure as part of the process, okay, we're not going to encourage innovation. So cultures that kind of push that front are cultures that can understand and appreciate, almost celebrate, if you want, failure, understanding this is part of the process in order to excel and in order to succeed. So culture is another piece. And then the third piece is really having access to capital, which is also a very important component, because these startups many times need capital. And this is something that you build up, having a vibrant private equity industry, VC industry, angels, which are many times entrepreneurs who have actually done well and are supporting others. These are kind of, I think, the things that you kind of, regardless of where you look at, which countries that are really hotbeds, they kind of replicate that model. Seeing all of those come kind of in interchange. And maybe another one to think about is immigration policies, which is interesting because it's all about diversity. We find that startups and innovation excel in a world where we have a lot of diversity. And maybe it's not a coincidence that both in the US and Israel, they were melting pots where people came into those countries from different cultures, from different languages, with different mindsets. And when these people get together, you know, they tackle problems in a very wide spectrum from different angles, and that helps push innovation forward.
I can certainly, I think it's a huge amount of us for us to think about there, and I can certainly see just in the audience over in this section a couple of people who were perhaps struck by some of those points. We have particular challenges in South Africa, but despite that, we have a number of successes, and I think that, you know, the number of people we have in the room is testament to that. And we have small successful businesses as well as large ones. If you were looking at some of the key things that were going to happen in the future in tech right now, and you were running your own business, what are perhaps the one or two things that you'd really want to take notice of in order to be successful, not just now, but next year? And once you've answered that, I think I'll open the floor to the audience.
Sure. So there's a few things that come up to my mind. One is we're talking about innovation, and maybe the other part of this, which I think a lot of people here are interested in, is entrepreneurship. And for me, the amazing thing about the internet, as I'm thinking about it in a way that it's decreasing the barriers to entry to becoming an entrepreneur. Okay? Why is that? Because the ability today to scale a business via technology is much more accessible and much cheaper than it was ever, right? Through things like cloud computing, basically you can test out things very cheaply and you can scale them very fast. And you don't have to upfront buy, you know, high investments of equipment and infrastructure in order to do that. And the good thing, what that means is if you have an entrepreneurial spirit, it's much easier to open a business and a startup than it was ever before. You know, the more challenging side of this is it's also true for your competition. So I think that's kind of one part. The other part, which we talked about, and I think it's an obvious one, is definitely in this region, but I would actually argue everywhere in the world, you really need to think about mobile. Okay, and I don't even like the word mobile, because when we talk about mobile, we think mobile phones. For me, really, when I think about Africa and mobile, it's actually getting the first micro PC into the pockets of people. And then in this PC, voice will be one of the applications of many applications that people will use. So it's not so much more about the phone, it's about a mini computer that will give you access to all the information in the world and to the cloud and all these great applications. And you know, the thing that struck me about how amazing this world is that this is probably going to get more and more affordable and ubiquitous. And I had a really unique opportunity with the leadership team at Google to meet Bill Clinton. And we asked him, what's the most amazing thing you've seen in the digital era? And then he basically said, you know, as president of the US, I had access to less information than what any person today with a smartphone and access to the internet has. And I thought that was really astonishing. You know, I know that rationally, but to really see.
That was only the mid-90s, and we're not talking about a long time.
Yeah. So this is not like last century, right?
Well, it is actually last century.
See, we have this thing at Google. You always have to make sure you recruit people who are smarter than you.
So, do we have a few questions from the audience? I think there's one up there. Should we line up one or two? So we've got one there, and then Elizabeth to the middle, maybe? And perhaps just your name and the business or organization you're from would be great for critical
Okay, my name is Philip Barber. I'm from a company here in Cape Town called Thought Factory. I was very interested by your point with regard to Israel embracing failure. I love the thought of that, specifically when it comes to finance. We would sometimes in South Africa, when we look for venture capital, the venture capitalist tends to look at us and say, well, it's going to cost you 60% or more of your company, and you finish up owning a very little amount. Is that the case in Israel? And if it's not, can we be introduced to some venture capitalists in Israel?
First of all, I'm sure they'll be happy to meet, you know, new potential customers. But to be honest, this is changing. That's changing a lot. It's changing because it comes back to the point I had before, is that the more I see the mix of the businesses that VCs invest, in the past few years in Israel, we've seen a higher and higher percentage of them investing in internet-based businesses. And because many of those internet-based businesses have found ways to scale with little investment and actually become cash positive pretty early on, we're seeing almost the opposite phenomena where VCs are saying, wow, these guys don't need us as much as they did before because they don't need as much money up front in order to invest, and they're becoming cash positive very quickly. And then they're asking the VCs to put a lot of money and give them a smaller share. So this whole change into more internet businesses, I think, actually draws probably more power into the entrepreneurs and this relationship between VCs and entrepreneurs. At least this is what I've seen in Israel. And then another thing is many times VCs want to get into a business which is already profitable. So the first investment is actually done by a pre-VC financing vehicle, usually angel investors. And many times those angel investors are either, you know, professionals or people who have done exits in the past and now want to share their knowledge with younger entrepreneurs. And that's kind of the first phase. And then, you know, these are much smaller amounts and smaller equity in response. But it's a lot of experimentation. It's not that you get that model right. It's a lot of experimentation. And I think the nice thing about South Africa is it's really up to you guys what you do with this economy. If you take it to be a more innovative economy, if you take it to be an economy that looks at commodities, if you take it to be an economy that is service-oriented versus manufacturing-oriented. And it's where you will focus on, where you will bring your passion and energy. That's what's going to happen, and it's really up to you. And I see a lot of promise here. I actually think one of the hardest things when you go into a place like South Africa in general, and Africa. There are so many opportunities. I think one of the challenges is to pick just a few and really focus on them. Because if you're trying to capture all of them, you get nothing done. So there is abundance of opportunity here.
In the middle.
Hi there, my name is Joshua. I'm a software developer and entrepreneur.
You're in the wrong conference.
Well, entrepreneur as well, so I have to do both things. So yeah. Thank you for coming. It's an honor to speak to you. My question is, Google's got a lot of power, and do you get involved with governments to, like for example, our currency exchange control laws? They're very restrictive for receiving foreign currency and holding foreign currency and so on. Do you get involved with the government at all? And also, like, our labor laws are also very restrictive to hire and fire and all that kind of stuff. Like, it just makes it very difficult to start businesses and trade with foreign currency and so on.
Yeah. So first of all, you know, we have a significant presence now in South Africa, and I know it's funny. This is way too American. Sorry, but you were saying, you know, you guys have a lot of power, and then I'm thinking Spider-Man. You know, with a lot of power comes a lot of responsibility. But on a serious note, I do feel we have a lot of responsibility as being a significant player in the internet space. And that responsibility is, first of all, what we can demonstrate, that we can bring value. And it's also talking to the government about, you know, different stuff that they can do around regulation and policy that will help build a more open ecosystem, a more competitive ecosystem, which will, you know, drive more benefits to the users, right? I think that's the key thing. But it's not enough, and it's not only about, you know, talking to the government or blaming the government, if you want, for what you think is not happening here and should. I think it's also up to companies to demonstrate. And our responsibility, I think, is to really show what the positive impact of the internet can be on culture, on economic, and on society. And as Luke just took you through his presentation, I could see a lot of that, right? How the internet can contribute to the economy. We've done economic impact studies in South Africa that really show that SMBs that embrace the internet become more profitable. They usually hire much faster and more than those who don't. So it's also a contributor to employment and GDP growth. And then that was not enough. We actually took it another step in conjunction with the government and with the private sector and said, okay, how can we help small businesses actually embrace and get online to really instigate that growth? And these are great initiatives, but you know, we need to do more. And when I say we, it's all of us together, right? It's the whole industry, it's all the players. On the culture front, again, as Luke said, he mentioned the Nelson Mandela partnership and Desmond Tutu partnership that we have as well to bring some African culture online. This is another thing kind of that I worry about, and I think we need to do much more and much better work around, which is bringing African content online. There's still a problem today with the internet. It's way too Anglo-Saxon or American, if you want. Okay, most of the internet is in English. And I think we need to do a better job to make sure the internet reflects the different cultures, the different languages that exist today in the world. There are many different dialects and languages in Africa, for example. And we need to make sure that the content on the internet is actually relevant to South Africans' lives, right? So we need to make it more local. And we need to make sure that there is plenty of that content on the internet. And I think today there's a gap, right? About 14% of the population of the world is African, but only 2% of the content on the internet, or 2% of the websites, right? So there's a gap there, and we need to work on decreasing that gap.
Well, I think that we've reached the end of our slot. So I'd like to say thank you very much, Meir, for sharing some of your thoughts with us. I think it's a huge amount of challenge, but also excitement about embracing some of those challenges. And hopefully the rest of today will be an opportunity for us to discuss how we go about doing that. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Best of luck.
And so we move on to a very exciting part of our day today. But it's not something that I'd like to announce. In fact, what I'd like to do is to hand over to our partner for this part of the day, Amit Maharaj, who is the Managing Executive for Telkom Mobile, is going to spend the next 5 minutes explaining to us why indeed we're so excited about this part of the morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Luke.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Great to be in Cape Town. Unfortunately, I have to leave very early, a little later, and yeah, the weather looks good for a change. We have some exciting news today, but before I get there, I just wanted to take a step, back to understand, where we are today in the ways of the world with regards to technology. We talk about YouTube, we talk about Google+, Gmail, email, Facebook, Twitter, GPRS, 3G, HSPA+, LTE. In fact, we've got LTE in the country already. And we as a group, as a collective, are immersed in the technology so much and so familiar with it. We forget, that more than 80% of South Africa don't even know what it is about. If we have to go down memory lane, and I'm not sure for most of you when was the first time you saw a PC. For me, it was 10 years old. It was the first time I logged onto a computer, and it was a life-changing experience. The ability to do things, and for that time, it was just a monochrome screen and playing a card game on the computer, which was rather exciting. But 80% of South Africa hasn't experienced it yet, and if we have to look at the many reasons of why that's the case, it's education, it's the access to devices, and pretty much the cost of technology. When we first launched GPRS in the early 2000s, or mobile data, the cost per megabyte was 46 Rand. 46 Rand a megabyte. On our ATA LTE network a month ago, we got 90 megabits per second on a downlink. Now imagine paying 46 Rand a megabyte at 90 megabits per second. It's unfathomable. Now, if we have to look where we are as South Africa, while we have one of the biggest GDPs on the continent, we rank number 5 in terms of internet penetration. Luke intimated earlier about the fact that we'll pass 11 million, or we're close to 11 million this year, and that was 25% growth from last year. So 25% growth on the internet, largely driven by mobile adoption. What we found that the price of internet data has largely been driving the uptake in terms of mobile usage, or mobile data usage in South Africa. Now, when we got together with Google a couple of months ago on this project, it's really exciting. It's I think life-changing for most South Africans. I mean, imagine if you could, as a student, any student in South Africa, freely being able to go and access a Google search, finding a Wikipedia link for dinosaurs, as an example, and completing their school project. I remember we used to walk to a school library to look in a catalog cabinet to find a book that might have access to dinosaur material. So I think the ability to open this up to South Africa is great. Without further ado, I'm going to talk to you about what we're unveiling today. ATA, in collaboration with Google, has is jointly bringing Google Free Zone to South Africa. Now, Google Free Zone, what it enables is someone with an ATA SIM card with 0 account balance is able to freely access the web. They're freely able to access Google search. So they could access Google search and enter in a search. And again, I'll use the dinosaur example. They could get more refined and say Wikipedia and dinosaur, and a list of results will come through. The consumer will have the ability to drill down in the first set of results and get to a landing page. That will also be free. So whole page of information freely available to South Africans. In addition, we also, as part of the Google zone, Google Plus is also included free of charge. And Google Mail. It's text-based mail, so attachments won't be included, but everyone can have a free email account and freely access it. So with the zero balance, we've liberalized the web or the internet for South Africans. Now, it took some time. There's a lot of technology involved, and we're very proud about it. Our billing systems have enabled us to make this possible. And I think the two tech leaders in the market have come together. I want to implore the journalists out there in terms of those that are here today and those that are listening in the Hangout sessions, that we've given South Africa free internet. It's up to you to do your job and get it and get the message out there. Thank you. I'm gonna hand over to Brian from Google, who's gonna take you through the details of the Google Free Zone. And yeah, enjoy. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Hello, everyone. Let me just get set up here. Isn't this amazing news? We're extremely excited about this. So it's going to be my pleasure today to demonstrate this to you and also to tell you a little bit about why we think this is important. Give me a moment. So firstly, thank you, Amit, and thank you, ATA, for sharing our passion to make the mobile web affordable for everyone. It's been a really great pleasure working with ATA and the team to launch this product and bring it to South Africa. Now, most of you will notice that I'm taking November pretty seriously this year. So hopefully you won't be too distracted by the mode during the demo. But before that, I'd like us all to pause for a moment and just think about the barriers which prevent millions of people from accessing the internet every day in South Africa and in most emerging countries. Things which we take for granted every day. Put yourselves in the shoes of a non-internet user, but someone who's heard about all the amazing things which you can do with the internet and how it can actually make a difference in your life, and you've decided to give it a try. You've also learned that it's only useful once you've actually learned how to use it. So, you go ahead and buy a cell phone. Now imagine the excitement when you open up that shiny package of something like a Nokia X2 for only 600 Rand. Or maybe a Nokia C2, 400 bucks. Or maybe you even have been given a hand-me-down phone, something like this old, it's actually my old Nokia E65. It's a 5-year-old cell phone, basically available for free in the market. So you get your hands on one of these devices and you load up some airtime, maybe 5 Rand, and you tentatively click that internet icon on the phone to give it a try. At first, it's quite confusing. Lots of jargon and stuff which you don't understand. What is an OV store anyway? But you persevere, and eventually you get to some news site or entertainment site or social site that you've been hearing about, and you start getting the hang of things. But just as you get started, just as the bug starts to get you, you get a shock to find that you have no airtime left. Because, unbeknownst to you, you've just been charged the highest possible data rate in the country. Imagine your disappointment. Now, you're afraid to explore further and to learn about this thing called the internet. Because you've been trained to believe that the internet is more expensive than it really is. Enter Free Zone. Our hope is to make more of the mobile web accessible and affordable to everyone, to enrich their lives and to grow their businesses. Free Zone allows people to effectively discover and use the web to do the things which matter to them for free. You can search the entire web. Google's whole index is there. You can search all of it and begin to access the vast resources out there for free. You can share special moments with family and friends, again, for free. And you can stay in touch with the rest of the online world using email, again, for free. So let's see how this works. Firstly, you're going to need a ATA SIM, which I believe is available pretty much anywhere, and an internet-capable phone. I'll be using this Nokia X2 for the demo. This is an edge phone, so not 3G, and as I said, 600 bucks. FreeZone is only available through the browser on mobile phones. It's not available on tablets or desktops. Clearly, those people can afford some internet access. We launched the service with Globe in the Philippines on just Thursday last week. And I must say that I'm very proud of the Google team and for ATA for bringing this to South Africa so soon after launch. Well done, everyone. Can we switch over to the projector, please? Okay. So we're going to get started over here. And just adjust this quickly. Is that clear for everyone? All right, so the first thing which we're going to do is go to the FreeZone. You open up the native web browser on your phone and access ata.com/freezone. This will be up on the websites later. I've created a shortcut link to this, so I'm just going to click that and open the FreeZone landing page. I must be the bravest Googler here because this is all live. And you can see that we are taken to the landing page, showing me that I can search, email, and share using FreeZone. Now, if I already have a Google account, I can sign in. Or if I don't have a Google account, I can sign up for a new one for free within the FreeZone. So I already have one, and I'm going to sign in. Okay. Again, just a reminder that if you don't have one, you can get one. And I'm going to sign in with my demo account. Fortunately, big fingers and small typing is not always so good. I'm going to sign in with my secret password. And sign in. I'm not going to save my password. And I'm into the FreeZone. Now, every part of the FreeZone is identified as being the FreeZone with this at the top, which says that this page is shown for free. Just check the focus here. Should be better. And you can see that I'm signed in, and I can immediately search, go to Gmail, or go to Google+. Obviously, if I'm roaming, there will be data charges incurred. So let's get started. Let's do some search, and we'll search for something which all South Africans love, like soccer. And you can see I'm starting with a very simple search. And the search results are shown. These are normal Google mobile search results. And you can see a whole bunch of websites are on display, as well as some image results. Now, as most of you know, search is an iterative process. You keep searching and refining your search queries until you find the thing which you're looking for. And of course, we help you with that process with some suggestions. So I've heard about this thing called Wikipedia, which apparently has some pretty good information. So I want to learn more about soccer, see if it is the same as this thing called football. I'm going to go into Wikipedia, and now I've refined my search specifically for soccer within the Wikipedia world. And we can see that, oh wow, there's actually a website or a Wikipedia page about soccer in South Africa. So now I'm going to go into that website. And this is the great thing about FreeZone, because not only are the search results free, but the first page of websites linked from those search results are also free. And we are reminded of this fact by the label at the top, which says that these results are free. Just wait for that page to load. Now, this is the entire Wikipedia page with all of the detail, and it has been transcoded to suit feature phones. And if you look at the scroll bar on the right over there, there's a lot of data here. Now, I'm quite interested in Amaglugglug. So I'm going to click on Amaglugglug, and oh, well, now this is where the free zone ends. But before just starting to deduct money from my account, I'm actually told and warned that if I continue, I will pay data charges. And this is completely flips the behavior on its head, because we warn the user that they will pay and they can continue at a charged rate, or they can return to the free zone, or they can select an appropriate data plan for the service. And one of the great things about ATA's service, I don't know if you've used it, but you can actually buy data bundles, top up your accounts directly from a web page, which is pretty amazing. And you don't need to fiddle with silly USSD codes, although that option is also available to you. Since this is a zero balance SIM, I actually have no airtime on the SIM at all. I'm not going to buy a plan now, and I'm going to go back to my searches. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just slightly refine my search, because actually I'm quite interested in what's going on in the soccer scene in Cape Town. So I refine my search. Sorry. And you can see that my favorite team has come up, AJ's Cape Town, and they've actually done quite a good job with their web development, because they've included information within the search results snippet itself. So I can see that there's an upcoming game on the 23rd of November. Because it's the first link, it's free, I will now see the website. Including some articles with some photographs. Of course, I could click on those and go and look in more detail. Upcoming match fixtures and recent match results. Fortunately, we're not doing so well. So hopefully that makes the search aspect of Free Zone rather clear. What I'm going to do now, and most of you probably don't know this, but I've actually been looking for another job. Sorry, Luke. And what I've done is I've been going to some internet cafes, and I'm using my Gmail account to submit to some online job boards. But it's quite a pain to keep going to internet cafes. But now using Free Zone, I can actually check my email for free, and it looks like there's an interview waiting for me to be a call center team manager, not just an agent. So now I can read my email. As Amit mentioned, there aren't any attachments here. To do that, I would need to go to a computer. But I can easily reply to this. Now, the important thing to note about this is that on the back end, this is a fully fledged Gmail account. 10 gigs of free storage, just an amazing service. And as the user increases with their levels of affordability, they can upgrade to different devices and still access this account. So I'm just going to say, that's great, or maybe I should be a bit more polite and just say thank you. And send that email. And you'd be surprised with how much you can actually get done using this kind of email interface. Kind of reminds me of a BlackBerry. Okay, so moving on now, and I'm very excited about this. I'm going to go into Google+. And within Google+, I'm going to tell my friends about this wonderful news. And while I'm there, you'll see that there's a hell of a lot within Google+. So Lisma has just posted about the launch. And there's a lot of information here. So this is a fully fledged social experience on very basic feature phones. You can see that I can +1 results, I can reshare, I can comment. It's an incredibly powerful social experience. I'm not going to labor you with all the details of Google+. I'm sure you're all avid users of it already. What's quite unique and I'd like to demonstrate is the ability to actually post from my feature phone. So I'm just going to write a quick response. And of course, I don't want everyone to know about this, so I'm going to use the power of circles to only share this with my friends. Oops. Let's click that. You can see I've got lots of circles of the stuff which I'm interested in. And I'm going to add a photo. Now what's amazing about this is I could obviously take a photo, or I could use a photo which I've already stored. So I have one of those. Going to upload that. Now of course, okay, there we go. And I can post that. So if any of you are following Mzansi Demo on G+, you'll see this post. So I think you'll agree that this is really powerful and amazing stuff. What I'd very quickly like to show you is that it's available on the most basic kind of feature phone which I could find, something like this, Nokia C2. Search for weather in Cape Town, and because that's a specific search request, you'll actually see a search 1 box with the results right there. On an old phone, like this Nokia E65, similar kind of experience, actually very good. But it also actually works on smartphones. If you're using the native browser on a smartphone, you can still have a free experience. And it actually looks really great on this. By staying within the free zone. And then lastly, what I'd just like to show is all of this entire experience was all done on a zero balance SIM. So if I check my balance quickly, you'll see that it's still 0. Thank you very much.
I think that was superb. Personally, I'm the most excited human being on the planet.
You always are, Brett.
So well done to Eta. You guys have done a phenomenal job, and it's great to see that we've got an African first happening here. We're really pleased.
Absolutely.
We're running a bit over time.